second. I am certain there are more questions, and I know I have some more, but we want to be sensitive to people who have needs to get to work and so forth. So if we want to take a minute, and if anybody wants to slip out, you're welcome to, but I'm sure you folks stay as long as you'd like.
Sure. Certainly. Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Please, go ahead. Anjum, please.
And as you go, the reason we put some of those books out there was just so people could get a glimpse of some of the books that actually do have some good information. One of them is excellent, Who Speaks for Islam? It was by Professor John Esposito at Georgetown University and Dalia Bagate, who have been working in the White House for some time. And they did a Gallup poll, and the statistics are fascinating in that book itself. And these are available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
We have the Christian Bible. We have a variety of translations in the English. You know, the Catholic Bible. I mean, you name it, right? And there are issues of translation because none of us seem to speak Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic either these days, so there's confusion. Yeah. Is there only one English translation of the Quran to date? And if so, with this issue that you identified, for example, with the translation of the word friend, yeah. Are there alternatives? Is anybody working on that in the I guess in English?
Yeah. Right. Yes, they have made corrections. I think even the translation coming out of Saudi Arabia, I think they have made some corrections that they took the word friend out. For instance, Abu Alam al-Duli towards understanding Islam, which is basically a exegesis of the Quran itself. He provides better explanation, the proper use of words. It is an ongoing process. It's a continuing process, but it's very legit. But yes, absolutely, yes.
And as you can imagine, this is an issue for the issues of women too, because in the Quran, there are many places that talk about the word saying, and tell your spouses, or the spouses have this meaning men and women. It's a spouse. It's not the word women, but or wives. And yet, the men who have translated will continuously put wives, as if the wives have to carry the burden for something. And even for the issues of, a reward in heaven, the men seem to get this. Well, no, it doesn't say that in the Quran, actually. It's very gender neutral on many issues because it's supposed to be equally for women and men. And so someone who doesn't know Arabic is constantly reading translation. It seems like extremely biased text, but it's actually not in the Arabic because I've read the Arabic and I know that that's not actually there. So it's very problematic, even for just that aspect itself.
Well, the last slide.
Woman did come out with a translation recently too, so she was working on that.
Okay. This is the last slide. We just wanted to show you something here, just a matter of FYI. Verses from other scriptures, what if they were taken out of context? And you see what can happen. And we went to the trouble of taking passages out from both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And you can see that, if somebody, a naysayer, if you will, somebody who doesn't have the proper right intentions, if you will, they can really, cut and paste and present their own agenda. So this was something that we wanted to show you. What if it is taken out of context?
And as you know, most of the terrorists that we find today are young, relatively young, and their knowledge is greater. And they don't even have the experience of life to tell them that, you need to calm down. And so they are very hyped up with anger and rage and disillusion with the world. So this is a severe problem we're dealing with.
Is that anger and rage primarily focused on the United States?
I think I'm going to say that foreign policy of the United States and other Western countries has a big part to play in what their perception is and their understanding is. Much of the Muslim world has not been trained since colonialism, and that is a huge, huge topic in and of itself that we don't deal with enough. But majority of the Muslim world has not been trained to look inward and say, what can I do to fix the problem in my country? And so what is being trained into understanding is this is an outside force. Since colonialism, we have this problem. I don't want to deny it either, because if you look at political and economic aspects, that actually has great legitimacy because of what colonialism did to these countries. They literally stripped them of natural resources and then kind of scoffed at whether they should bother to do anything to help these countries. And then there's a book, I can't remember the author name, it was called Empire Strikes Back, which specifically talks about the same countries that were controlled and colonized, their people have actually come back to those very colonizers and started living there, you know, and then they went to immigration policy. But this is, I think the foreign policy definitely plays a role in it, so I don't want to reject that. But it's also what's happened within their own countries. These people are stuck in countries majority of the time that are dictatorships, great deal of censorship, no way to be able to say what they really want or do anything about the circumstances. And so that kind of lack of power and disillusionment. You know, I always tell people, if you look at, this is maybe funny to some of you, but if you look at a domestic situation where you have maybe the head of the household as an abuser, in villages in certain parts of the world, women will resort to black magic, voodoo, because that's the only thing they can get their hands on, to do something to the person who's abusing them, because they find no other means. That is another form of terrorism, right? But we call all of these things when individuals take law into their own hands and try to remedy a situation where there's an imbalance of power, we call it terrorism. We rarely will call what a government does to its own people terrorism. But this is kind of the way we have to understand, you know, where is it stemming from? Economics, for just now, the State Department has now finally, in countering violent extremism, in the CBE department, I have a friend who works there, started paying attention to the economic factors of what's happening and triggering all of these extremist situations right now. But that wasn't even looked at earlier. You know, they were just like, oh, it's politics, it's this and that. They weren't even looking at the economic factors involved.
As to some of the struggles in the Middle East, they're saying that the root cause is a lack of hope and economic opportunity, especially for young folks. Okay? Within the Muslim community, there are 1.5 billion Muslims. Is there a sort of worldwide effort within the community to provide relief and economic stimulus to the areas that are being affected by that lack of hope?
Well, again, it's a pertinent question. No question about it. But the answer to that is yes, but it's not being done in a concerted manner. And it's not being done in a unified manner. You have so many different countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, etc., you know, et cetera, et cetera. They have not joined hands, and it's not a concerted effort. This country does a little bit, this country does a little bit, you know, no concerted effort, none whatsoever. So it's haphazard. It's a lackadaisical effort, if you will. I wish things were a little bit different. I wish, you know, they would have formed some kind of a coalition, you know, to help this problem, to ease the problem. It needs to be done.
Yeah, it's actually, and a lot of people focus nowadays on the Gulf countries because they have the wealth, they have the oil, and we partner with them on so many things. But they're really, I mean, a very small amount of the entire Muslim world. The majority of the Muslim world is impoverished in severe circumstances with very low literacy rates. And so you're talking about a very small group of people who control a great deal of wealth, but it's up to them, right? You know, what are they really doing? How much are they doing? It's kind of like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. I mean, people who are billionaires, you know, you go and you're like, can I get some? And so the Muslim world is in that predicament. We just have those few. People are looking at, you know, shooting up all these skyscrapers and worried about, you know, gold plating on their bathrooms and, you know, their VIP lounges. Meanwhile, yeah, you know, so what can you do? So we have to understand that. But yeah, that hope is not being had quickly.
Yes, sir. Just give it.
But it seems that there's a very fractious nature of the religion from country to country that also melds politics with the religion that causes a great deal of intolerance one border country to another. So how do you resolve that issue within the religion itself? And that's where it kind of falls apart for me, right? That they'll never resolve the problems. And the ignorant people, the smarter people, you guys are here. Right?
Brain drain on those countries.
Brain drain.
Brain drain.
Exactly. So how do you deal with that? How do you solve that?
Well, not very easy. That's very, you're absolutely right. There's no question. I think, if I may say so, Kevin, I think you're referring to the Shia-Sunni divide. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's what you're actually referring to. It's unfortunate, that Saudi Arabia and their cohorts, are so adamant and they don't even want to talk, and that's not right. It isn't right. They're looking for their own personal interests. They have their own personal agendas. That's a problem. Believe me, there are a lot of people over here, a lot of Muslims over here that are not fans of the Saudi kingdom, if you will. We have tremendous respect for the, for the places over there, of course, the holy cities, if you will, what have you. But when it comes to the kingdom and rulers, we don't have much respect, really, honestly. I, for one, I should say that.
Yeah, and there's actually a book out there called The Great Theft, which is probably one of the best written books on this issue about what Saudi Arabia has done, unfortunately, to make sure that it has the final say on the religion of Islam, which is actually probably one of the last countries that should have it because of the way we handle Islam. I want to bring back historical context into this because, Shia Sunni, the divide that happened was very bad. But at the same time, we have to remember that for centuries and centuries, Muslims actually did not have this explosive problem. There might have been some skirmishes, there might have been some things here and there, but to the level that it is today, on that point, a lot of people will argue that there's a lot of outside influence, and it has to do with the oil, and it has to do with the Gulf countries and the control. Because even when we go back to the issue of what happened with Iran, this is something that's very difficult to talk about in America because we have such severe biases in this country. And I think in the movie Argo, they give you that really nice little glimpse of what was going on right in the beginning, where everybody's shredding papers in the U.S. Embassy in Iran, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, everything's, they're wreaking havoc, and that we had a part in doing some really shady stuff there. But then the rest of the entire part of the 2 hours is all about, how does Hollywood end up saving us and Canada saves the day type of thing. But the focal point, which should have stayed longer, was how much damage have we gone in and done. And Saudi Arabia has been our bedfellow for a very long time. And they are very, very determined to ensure that Iran does not get a piece of the pie. And so it is a political issue, actually. It's not really a religious issue. It is a political issue. It's an economic issue. And yet, people keep bringing it back into the religion. Religion, even the Shias and Sunnis have lived for centuries together. And like I said, there might have been a couple of tips here and there, little skirmishes and a little bit of power struggles, but never to the extent that we're seeing today. Pakistan, the Shias and the Sunnis lived there just like the Christians and the Muslims for centuries without problems. And in fact, Pakistan, sometimes you can't tell the difference between the Sunnis and the Shias and some of the things that they're doing. But only recently has that become conflated with other issues, and then people actually having riots and actually fighting one another. These are very recent and modern issues. They don't really go back into the religion as heavily as people are made to believe.
One last word before I pass this thing over to Stan. There's some free literature outside. Feel free to pick them up. And thank you so much.
Too, I believe, yes.
Stan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And one more gentleman here.
Yeah, I just want to say, I want to thank everyone for coming. Swan had to leave, he had a meeting at 9 o'clock, so he had to leave. But if you have any questions, we're always here. Our cars are outside.